The next morning we get there, we set everything up, we get ready, and the first group shows up. And there's 40 kids that come in, just cab after cab after cab. It's real, it's game time, we're checking everybody in. Typically, an operation like this is gonna be 15 minutes, get everybody in there, verify everything, exchange money, activate it, feds rush in, arrest everyone, take us to the airport and then to jail, right? Well, this one, they wanted us to get out first. And we're in there 15 minutes and the other group hadn't shown up. Then it's 20 minutes, then it's 30 minutes. We were in there for an hour and a half, Paul.
Welcome to another episode of the Liberating Humanity podcast. I'm Paul Hutchinson, and I'm here with one of my best friends on the planet, because we've done some undercover work together and we've done a lot of good charity things together. I'm here with Jeremy Neves. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here.
I'm excited to be here and chop it up with one of my good friends.
So we didn't even know each other a few years ago when you ended up on an operation.
Yeah.
In fact, the operation that I went into detail on, the Mexico one that ended up in Puerto Vallarta, that ended up being the largest child rescue in one day in Mexico history.
Yeah.
Which was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And sadly, I was there doing all of the
8 months
setup,
of pre-work. Yeah.
Deep stuff, but I wasn't able to be there.
Yeah.
On the takedown.
Yeah.
And so I was super excited for you to come on and just tell us the story of how that takedown happened.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of talk about some of the other things that we've done with Ecuador, et cetera, and then delve into family stuff. So
absolutely. So again, this is my introduction to the work, right? I've been to the charity events and been doing all of the training and everything else. And the goal was to get me on a takedown as the first operation and to be able to be a part of that and help support it. And you guys had done 8 months of preparation, going in and out of country, meeting with the different traffickers. You had put together multiple different trafficking rings. There was 2 different groups that were heavily trafficking in Puerto Vallarta. And so the time came that I was supposed to go. And actually, they had scheduled the date. Everything was set up. And then they had to cancel it the day before because one of the traffickers turned up dead.
Yeah,
had been killed, got shot.
Yeah.
And so they're like, this isn't safe. We need to delay this. So it got pushed back a couple weeks. And I happened to be at Disney World with my family. I was with my mom, my dad, my siblings, my kids, my wife, and got the calls like, hey, it's time to go. And so I literally spent the day at Disney World, hopped on a plane, flew to Mexico.
Awesome. The
team was already there. I remember getting an Uber to this alleyway where they had me dropped off, and I hear them whistle at the end of the road. And I get in the car, and some of our other friends and operators there. And we were waiting for the feds to come. We were meeting up with the feds, setting up the house, because there's going to be a party at this house. The first thing that was really impactful for me is I get into that car, and I knew one other operator, and I knew our head of security, Joseph, who you've had on as well, and who'd been my trainer and all the Krav Maga and everything. But I didn't know the others, and one of them turned to me, Andy, and he said, Jeremy, why are you here? And I was like, what? And he's like, why are you here? He wanted to know. And I just said, well, there's 2 reasons. One, I can empathize with these kids as a child who has some sexual trauma. And number 2 is as a father. If anyone had taken one of my children, I would do anything I could to get them back and hope that anyone else who had the capacity would do the same. And so that's why I'm here. And he's like, okay, awesome.
You're here for the right
reasons.
You're
here for the right reasons, because it can attract other people. And so we bonded immediately. We went into this house. We met with the feds. We discussed how this was going to go down, how the takedown was going to take place. We were throwing a party. And the traffickers, the 2 different rings, were going to be bringing their girls in to this party, and then how we were going to execute the takedown. And after we met with them and set everything up in the house, we went to the grocery store and bought all the stuff for a party, got the whole house set up, got the cameras set up. And then that night the plan was to go meet with the different rings, meet with the 2 different groups, and prepare them for tomorrow. Just solidify everything, let them know, hey, no weapons coming into this, and also inform them that the their competitor was going to be there.
Yeah, so we don't get shot.
Yeah. And they weren't happy, but like, as you know, they're super greedy and they want the money, and this is an 8-month in process, and so they're like, okay, we'll make it work, right? And so I had the opportunity to go to one of them. One was a lady who ran a massage parlor, and had these young girls working for her. And then another was another group, a cartel group, and we met with them at a bar at like 2 a.m. And we're sitting at dinner, and I'm sitting here. He's sitting right across from us with a couple of his guys, and there was eight of us there. And I just remember looking at this guy, and this is my first experience, right? Interacting with these traffickers at all. And he's showing us pictures of these girls, and he's laughing and talking about the things that we can do. And we're having to laugh and high five and hug. And I just remember like playing that role as I'm like talking. And then all of a sudden he's talking to someone else, and I noticed like the blood drain out of my face. And like, I could tell I had gotten like really serious, because I'm like looking at this guy like, I want to strangle you right now.
Yeah.
And I had to immediately like get that back, like, hey, stay in character. This is what we're doing, right? This is why we're here.
So many times undercover, I've felt that.
Yeah.
And I realize, you know, if I follow through with what I really want to do right now, we're going to lose those kids.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to be able to find that they're going to be picked up by one of his other guys or whatever.
Yep.
The only way to get to the kids is to follow all the way through. In fact, my very first operation, when the guy shows me this picture of this little child, the Navy SEAL that's standing behind me, he said that little girl looked like almost like my little daughter at home.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I almost unholstered my weapon right then and took him down. But I realized if we do, of course, we lose those kids. And so... yeah, you felt that same way.
Yeah, you feel it, and it's all the emotions. And we carried on. We had about an hour dinner. You know, we talked about everything for the next day, and then we come out, and we're getting into our cab, and we get in the cab, and it's like really quiet. And we're driving for a couple minutes, and one of the guys turned to me and said, "So, how was your first interaction? Like, how do you feel?" And I was like, "I'm exhausted, like physically, emotionally, spiritually exhausted, just like having to get into that role." And but also really excited. And I remembered like we had gone to the grocery store and we're buying all this stuff. And I had this moment of like, you guys had 8 months, there had been all of these setbacks and delays and challenges, all the moving pieces. We're just informants, right? We have no jurisdiction or anything else. We're helping support the federal agents. Yeah. And so we're rocking to the beat of their tune. And I just remember having this feeling of like, I hope this goes through. Like this, I'll do whatever it takes. It was one of those moments where I realized how much I had, you know, sometimes you can be cheap about spending money or doing certain things or really protecting money when you've created a certain amount of wealth. And I remember at that moment being like, I would empty my bank account to make sure this thing goes through. Yeah. Right. Like you'll do whatever it takes, you know,
once you see the pictures of those children.
Yeah.
Once you see how real it is that these guys are selling kids.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm
this matters most.
Right this matters most.
Yeah.
This has to happen.
Yeah.
And you know, what's interesting is not only are the different countries' laws and regulations different, but different jurisdictions within each country are different as well. Mm-hmm. And Mexico's is just the same. There's, you know, there's a prosecutor in that jurisdiction was like, okay, yes, we've had other operations where the operators got arrested with the traffickers. Yep. So we were able to be there. The feds come in, they arrest us too, and then boom, we're out. And they don't know that we had anything to do with it because we're getting arrested too. Well, in this jurisdiction, the prosecutor said, you know what? We can't have you guys actually get arrested with them. If we do, then we have to take you in and process it. We can't just take you to the airport. And so you had to figure out how to get all the kids there, all the traffickers there, you there, get you to leave before the feds came in and busted everybody.
Which made it pretty complex, right? Because we had set up this, we got in a house that didn't make it super easy for that. There was literally on 3 sides walls that were like 25 feet high, right? So we're not escaping out the sides, whatever. We literally all had to make it out the front door.
You were thinking about coming out the top window, huh?
Well, coming out the top window.
You're like, no, this is a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, there was all these things, but they had trouble with those. That jurisdiction needed us to escape first and then take them. So the next morning we get there, we set everything up, we get ready, and again, the 2 different rings are coming in, and the first group shows up, and there's 40 girls. 40 kids that come in, just cab after cab after cab. Wow. And it's real, it's game time. We're checking everybody in. And typically an operation like this is going to be 15 minutes, you know, get everybody in there, verify everything, exchange money, activate it, feds rush in, arrest everyone, take us to the airport and them to jail, right? Well, this one, they wanted us to get out first. And we're in there 15 minutes and the other group hadn't shown up.
Wow.
Then it's 20 minutes. Then it's 30 minutes. We were in there for an hour and a half, Paul. So you can imagine, like, you come in with a game plan. Everyone's playing different roles. Everyone kind of knows their job and their role and everything else. And but now we've got a delay. And so you got to imagine the traffickers are going, why aren't you having sex with these children? Why aren't, like, what's going on here? And so we just kept making up other things like, hey, we're waiting for this. The boss has to select who he wants first, so we're doing all sorts of different things to delay, what's going to take place.
Wow. I didn't realize there was that much of a delay.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened on my first rescue mission.
Really?
When we were in Cartagena, Colombia, the one the movie's about, in the movie, they depict the delay because they were waiting for the other boat of children.
Yeah.
Okay. In real life, all of the kids were brought, 54 children were brought to Cartagena, Colombia on that island. They all showed up right there.
Yeah.
But then we gave the signal. We're like, our signal was ordering tequila, right? As soon as we're sitting there talking with all the traffickers, as soon as we have them on camera saying exactly why those kids are there and what they're willing to do, so the kids never have to stand trial and say, this is what happened.
Yeah.
We have it all on camera. As soon as we have all of that, then we ordered tequila. And then literally 2-3 minutes later, after we ordered tequila, the waiter's supposed to go back, radio the other agents, boom, they're supposed to storm it all where you get arrested, right?
Yeah.
2 minutes passes, 5, 10, 15, 20. It was 45 minutes later. Now, the thing is, we didn't know what the delay was.
Yeah, you're like, what's going on?
We had no idea.
Did they leave us out here?
Exactly. They're leaving us and we have the traffickers here. And so, when we ordered tequila, unfortunately, to the traffickers, that meant the party's ready to start.
Yeah.
Right? So Fuego gets up and he's like taking out his cocaine and he puts it out on the table, and we're like, okay. And then a couple of the Edouard and the girl that's in the movie, they go go get the kids to bring him out for the party. This can't happen, right?
Yeah.
And so it was divine intervention that I was there. Not because I'm got all these crazy skills, but because of the fact that I had negotiated hundreds of business deals over my career. And so I said, guys, you've just proven to me that you could deliver what you said you would deliver. The whole reason for this party is so that I could see if I wanted to invest in your business. So let's right here. You bring out those kids, you bring out that cocaine. I'm gonna have a great time. I'm gonna be effed up for the next 2 days. Bring me out a piece of paper instead. Let's draw this. And that business plan was a pure just delay. Unfortunately, that business plan was the darkest, most evil piece of paper that I've ever seen, let alone written myself, right? And what's sad is that business plan penciled, really well. Like I put in $8 million into this sex resort for children they wanted to build, and it penciled at tens of millions of dollars a year coming in. Yeah, because they had these connections with these wealthy Americans that would pay $100,000 membership fee. I mean, it was the stuff that they talked about in the movie. It came from that business plan that we were putting together with those guys trying to delay, having no idea. I'm like, what the crap are the agents, right?
Yeah.
So fortunately, you guys were at least the agents were there.
Yeah, there were 70 agents a couple blocks away waiting to come in. We ended up pulling out a broomstick and doing the limbo and having them line up and see who could go the lowest, and we give them money, whoever could go the lowest. I mean, we were coming up with ways to delay and whatever else. And then what actually ended up happening was the head trafficker got a call and took off.
Oh dear.
And so we're like, do we take him down? No, we can't blow our cover. You know that. We just can't. Feds are out there. They're watching. We're good. And so we're like, okay, we're going to carry on. We're still waiting for these other girls. We can't leave this. And I keep saying girls because this was all girls. It's not always all girls, but it was all girls on this operation, waiting for the other kids. And about 10, 15 minutes later goes by, and we get a message from the feds like, hey, you guys should just wrap this up. We had to make a decision. And so again, tequila time was our go-to. We say tequila time. I'm fairly tan, and at that time was really tan. And so I knew the top 4 agents, but I didn't know all 70. And so I'm like, I'm the first one out of here because I don't want to get confused as one of the traffickers. So they say tequila time. I made my way out. Everyone had their routes out of the house. We put some money, probably 10 grand in cash on the table, and said, count this, we'll get the rest. And one by one, we all hopped in the van. We took off, activated it. The feds came rushing in. At that time, the other traffickers in the house had actually started going down the street. Feds grabbed them.
Wow.
And while they were there and the doctors and aftercare people would come in, then 4 more cabs pulled up while the feds were there with the other girls. Now their leader took off, but those 8 girls were rescued. So there's 48 girls in total. Awesome. And we took off. It was a little stressful going to the airport. They had, the head trafficker had left and he was very well connected with the cartel and everything else. And so they said, hey, if he was tipped off, you guys' lives are in danger. Turn your phones off and get out of our country as fast as you can. Yeah. So it was a little stressful from the house to the airport. Once we got through security and everything, it kind of calmed down.
And then they ended up arresting him at his house, right?
They ended up they were at his house and got his wife, but they let him go for, I think he went for a few weeks and they just followed him and he led them to other groups and stuff like that. And they eventually took him down. Yeah.
The head of the federal police in Mexico. Yeah. He's, that was our last Mexico rescue.
Yeah.
And, we had done other things after that in Ecuador and other places, but he just as recently as just 2 weeks ago texted me and said, hey, Paul, there has never been a group that has done more good for the children down here than what you guys did. He said, I really want to do some more of those.
Yeah.
Because, unfortunately, it's Americans that are down there that are creating the demand.
Yep.
And so they need, for the undercover ops, they need Americans that are going down there that are trained like we are to be able to pull them all out.
So it was fascinating. I got to the airport. I remember calling my family, letting them know that we were okay. And people asking like, how do you feel? And I'm like, not good.
Yeah.
Like I thought I'd feel really, really good, but right now I don't. I just want to get out of this country. I was really, really struggling like with the way I felt, the way I was looking at people. I mean, and these traffickers look like totally normal guys.
Yeah.
So everyone else at the airport, I'm like, which one of you, it was really, really tough. But I remember I flew back and I met my family in Orlando and I'm at Disney World the next day. It's sunny outside. It's warm. I'm standing in line and I hear people complaining about the lines and people complaining about the heat. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, you have no idea what's going on in the world. And it had just, it changed my life forever. That day I actually have a tattoo that represents that day. It was the number of days I had lived until my life completely changed. And it was that day. And I got a text from one of our brothers, Attorney General Sean Reyes. He texted the group and he said, brothers, happy Father's Day. Today will always be a special day as we remember the reunions we helped create yesterday. And it was a full circle moment for me as somebody who went as a father saying, if my child was missing, and to realize literally the day before Father's Day, 48 girls were returned back to their parents. And so absolutely changed my life, my perspective on what mattered most, the impact we were making. And as much as there's been controversy about different things about the trafficking and the way operations were done and everything else, I will always stand by the fact that I know lives were changed. And that was an incredible opportunity for me to be a part of. And I have you to thank for it because you led the way. You led the way, and without you, I would have never had that opportunity, but it literally changed my life and brought so many things into perspective for me.
That's so beautiful. I've gotten to the point where I'm going to call it my gratitude scale.
Yeah.
Has expanded significantly. Yeah. Before I was just grateful for really good things, this new car, this big win, this $1 million paycheck, whatever else. Yeah. But that gratitude scale has gone to just being grateful for clean water, being grateful that my kids and grandkids are in a safe place, that nobody that I know personally is being abducted and raped. I mean, there's just so many things to be grateful for every single day.
Absolutely.
In our lives. And, our families. It's super beautiful that you started and ended that with your family.
Yeah.
You were, hey, we're here at Disney World and I'm going to leave for a day or two and then come back and celebrate that Father's Day with your kids.
Yeah. Put a lot of things in perspective for me, for sure.
Yeah. Super grateful for the man that you are. And,
thank you.
And since that time, we did a bunch of other operations together. We became good friends. And went on some ATV trips and
we've had some fun.
Chased some cows.
What's wild about that? I look at like the closest relationships that I have in my life today, and they're all people that have come through that. And I, as coaching and leading men and whatnot, I realize one of the most important things is having that tribe of people that you can lean on, that you can be vulnerable with, that can help call you into integrity and all of those things. And one of the things that I say to look for, like when you're trying to build that tribe, is like, who shares values with you? And one of the best ways to find that is through nonprofit charitable work.
Yeah.
And we all met each other at these, these charity auctions. We all came in our different ways, but got unified in a cause and a purpose. And not every cause is going to have something where you're like literally putting your life at risk and you're infiltrating cartels. And it's like, hey, you got my back, I got your back. Okay, well now let's go do some dangerous shit together. But that sure is a surefire way to build a deep, brotherhood really, really fast. And it's really cool to see how we've shown up for each other in all the other ways since then because of that.
Huge. In fact, my starting the child rescue work 10 years ago was a massive change for me. But my personal transformation came because of that brotherhood many years later. And when I got a call from Andy and Jermey, and they're both on the phone, and they said, Paul, do you trust us? And I said, yeah, I trust you with my life. I'd done 20 plus missions with Andy and like 13, 14 with Jermey at the time. And I said, yeah, I trust you with my whole life. And they said, well, then this is going to transform your life. And they talked about a facilitator, a doctor who had traveled the world and studied all different types of healing and transformational remedies, especially for people who had dealt with PTSD and whatever. And understand this, when you already know this, when you do the work that we've done undercover and finding these kids, if you're not careful, it can weigh really heavily upon all the other areas of your life. Yes, it helps you see.
Even if you are careful, it's heavy.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. And at the time I was first brought into the work because they wanted somebody to play that role of that arrogant asshole that was paying for these parties.
And you were really good at that.
I was good at that because that's what I was. I had a basketball court in my basement. What else does it take to boost your ego? Right. Yeah. I've got all these cars, all these girls, all this, and that was the life I was living. Now I wasn't doing anything illegal.
Yeah.
But I definitely wasn't living in pure integrity with the higher version of myself, and so fast forward, I had led all these missions. I had built a multi-billion-dollar company. I have all the NBA players at my house and half-dressed girls and all this crap. And I was on my second marriage, and it was headed for a divorce, and it was just super destructive. And they brought me into a plant medicine healing ceremony that, I grew up Mormon. I didn't drink my first sip of alcohol until I was 45 years old, right? I had been told my whole life that things like sassafras, white lily, psilocybin, these psychedelics, I had understood them as bad as cocaine because they were deemed Schedule I drugs in the late 60s. But the reality is they're safer than table sugar. Now, I'm not an advocate of somebody just going and partying with whatever, because you have to have a trained facilitator. You have to be setting sacred space. But in that journey experience, the plant medicine was able to take down my ego walls, which was impossible. I went to therapists. If she was cute, my goal when I sat down with that therapist was to win her over to, that's just
go on a date with you.
Oh, go on a date with me. Exactly. That's just kind of how I was thinking. That was my energy. And I was definitely, this ego was so big, it was impenetrable with a lot of these people. And in that space, I remember, having this beautiful spiritual awakening, this connection with my higher self and my true divine mission on this earth. And I realized that, yes, I was doing some great work from a charitable standpoint, but there were so many things out of alignment in my life that needed help. In fact, fast forward, we had done a couple of these to really work on some things. And we had one that was just us guys. It was me and Andy and Jermey. I think it was just three of us. Maybe there was a couple other there, but I remember sitting with Jermey, and I'm like, this was maybe 6 months to 8 months after my first experience. And I'm like, I'm glad that, I've really worked on my shit. I'm not the guy who used to, and then I would list these things, I used to have this many girls at this period of time and, whatever else. And he said, shut up right now. He says, you stop it right now. I said, what? He said, your energy is out of integrity. He says, you're sitting here bragging about how that's not how you are, but your energy is so still attached.
Connected there, yeah.
You're so attached to bragging about this girl and this girl and this girl. He says, no, that's not you anymore. And it took a real friend to be that in tune with me, and because nobody stood up to Paula fucking Hutchinson, right? Yeah. Everybody was intimidated to tell me what I really needed to know.
And you couldn't hear it.
I couldn't hear it even if they did say it.
If they said it, you couldn't hear it. Yeah.
Exactly.
But this was different. Yeah.
Yeah. I was in this space where I could absorb and be ready to listen. And I had friends that loved me enough to call me on my shit for real. I remember one at my own house where we called you on your shit at the same time, which is beautiful. And we all worked together on working through those things in a beautiful way. And
it was one of the most beautiful and transformative experiences of my life. It's interesting. We talk about wanting a tribe and brotherhood and everything else. And that was a moment where I was like, oh, do I want this? Like calling each other out. And the reality was it was calling us forward. It was seeing you as better than you're acting and wanting what's best for you, but also not just having a relationship with me. It's all of my brothers knowing my family and knowing our agreements. And so holding you to that standard when the spouse isn't there, or when you're stepping out of line and calling you aside. And I've seen that happen a number of times in this friend group where it's just like, hey, look, that's not okay. That's not who you are. And we still love you. We're not going anywhere. It's okay. But like, let's get this figured out. What's going on here, right? With empathy and love and compassion. And the fact that we've all been able to do it for each other has also made it really powerful, where it's like, okay, it's not just one of us. We all know we have stuff. And the reason we know that is because we're vulnerable with each other. We're open. We're willing to share our doubts and our concerns and our struggles. And so it's become a really, really beautiful space, and something I'm extremely grateful for.
Well, and I haven't always been that kind of a friend to guys like Andy and Jimmy. I mean, I remember when Andy was having some challenges in his relationship, and I was like, hey,
celebrating it,
come to my
encouraging
house.
it.
We got 16 girls here. You want to come over? That's a horrible example to be setting for a friend whose relationship was working through things. Now they're so close together, but I regret that all the time. I regret not, every time I would go to dinner with him and his wife, I feel that deep down about where I was 8 years ago with him. Yeah. And thinking I could have been a way better friend at that time, and helping him heal his relationship instead of throwing things out that would hurt it.
Yeah.
So
instead of just being that yes friend, right? Yeah. Or like, this is where you are, let me encourage that. Or it's acceptable for you, so it's acceptable for me. Yeah. And that's just, there's so many of those out there today. The rare one is the one that's like, I do accept you and love you, and you're better than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So you spend half your time just being an awesome dad and traveling and golfing and stuff, and part of your time investing in real estate and some other businesses and whatnot. But I'm most interested in your 20% of your time now on what you're doing to help men become the best version of themselves. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I've got 17 men that I'm coaching, and I keep it small. There's a one-on-one coaching element. There's a group community aspect of it. And then there's some events. And you've come to the events. Like I do 2 events a year. One is like a deep getting into the dojo and practicing, becoming the best version of ourselves. It's really personal development focused, some business aspects, but I bring in speakers and people to share experiences and stories. And we do meditations and breath work and exercises to really just like put the walls down, take the armor off, practice and become the best versions of ourselves. And you've helped a ton there. And then on our every other week, we have a group mastermind call. We talk about different topics and have different speakers, and there's accountability. And then we have one-on-one where I'm meeting somebody where they are with what they're dealing with and process through that, whether it's personal or business. The goal and really what's been the most magical aspect of it is, you look at the world today and there is so much toxicity, right? And you hear about this like toxic masculine and how, men have objectified women and you don't have their emotions in check, and the way that they're going about. And it's almost widely accepted, right? It's almost celebrated.
Yeah.
And so we don't focus on the or on the toxicity. We truly are the things that make you a masculine man, and it's the divine. And so we're really focused on vulnerability, being open. It's modeling the things that I see in our tribe, in all reality, the things that have changed my life. And so showing up with each other on these group calls and on these one-on-ones and at the events, and just showing what's really going on. Like, what am I really going through? What am I struggling with? What are my doubts? What are my fears? And being able to have space for that where you can be accepted. The thing about vulnerability is it's the key to unlock deep connection.
So true.
If you really want to be connected to somebody, you got to show them who you are. And it's relatable because you got shit, I got shit, we all do. And we actually really relate in that, because when somebody doesn't open up and doesn't share, you think they got it all figured out. And then you're comparing yourself and you're feeling less than, and it doesn't foster that deep connection.
Yeah.
And so we're really focused on being vulnerable men, and there's strength in vulnerability.
So powerful.
And then integrity is huge. And so there's a huge focus around integrity. And what that means is being aligned with our values and principles. It's about telling the truth. And we've had a lot of conversations about telling the truth and the importance of telling the truth. The reality is that I don't think any of us is perfect at that. It's an ongoing progression, right? Something as simple as like you reaching out and saying you want to hang out, and my knee-jerk reaction's like, instead of just saying no, I say, well, I got this going on, or whatever it is, right? We all have those where somebody's like, want to go to lunch, whatever. It's like, no, I just want to sit in the bath tonight and hang out. But I can't tell you that's why I'm not coming, But what are those levels of honesty and telling the truth? Being in integrity. You talk about kicking each other in the nuts and saying, hey, this is not you. You had an agreement and you stepped out of line with that agreement. You got to go have a conversation with your wife. Yeah. And we're going to be here for you. There is going to be consequences. The struggle with truth is that it's painful in the short term, always. But in the midterm and in the long term, it's always worth it. Yeah. And we're carrying around these backpacks full of rocks, and we're not even realizing it. And it's affecting us. It's hurting us. We say we're not telling the truth in the name of protecting somebody else, but it's really protecting our image that they'll have of us. And so it's been one of the most fulfilling things, Paul, in leading this group. If I were to nail it down to one thing, is me stepping into integrity from good friends that have called me into integrity, and continually doing so, because it's not that first time, it's the continually, hey, I slipped up and I got to be better, and being honest, and aligning my actions with my values. But seeing these men do that, I actually had probably one of the proudest moments of my coaching that I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. Is I've talked about this so much, and the men have heard it, and they've had coaching from me. I've had, role play to go and have conversations. A lot of it's in marriage, in relationships there, and being able to just have that one person that if we're committed to one person for the rest of time and all eternity, or this life, or whatever you see it as, shouldn't we be able to be 100% honest with at least one person? And if we should, it should be that one. And so I had a gentleman in the group that has done that multiple times, and it's been a tough struggle, and at times questioning, like, am I really committed to this path of ongoing honesty, because there's consequences and whatever else, and it hurts my wife, or insecurities, or, disconnection. And, he's stayed the course, and it's been beautiful. Well, 2 weeks ago, I get a call, I get a message from wife of one of the men in the group, saying, hey, do you have time for a quick call? And I get on this call, and this wife says, you've led our family and you've led my husband into integrity by telling the truth. And it's absolutely changed our marriage. And I've not been truthful with my husband. And I need your help to be able to follow this lead and to have some conversations. And went through and shared with me what was going on and the impact that it had, something she had carried for almost 20 years. Wow. And I was able to have the same conversation with her that I'd have with her husband, role playing how to have the conversation, how to hold the space, how to react, how to show up. And And I get a message from the husband the next day, like, thank you for loving my family and coaching my wife. And another message from her being like, this has literally changed my life. And you and I both know when you've carried something, especially that long, the weight, the light that you feel when you let that go. And it's just like, I mean, that to me is what it's all about. And it's been amazing to be a part of that.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And,
Yeah.
And bringing that exact conversation full circle to the child rescue work.
Yeah.
I realized after 10 years of doing ops, I realized that we were just fighting fire with fire.
Yeah.
And the thing that I found myself wishing every single time was, what if we could get to these kids before they're ever abused in the first place? How do we fix this problem before it becomes a problem?
Yeah.
Because just doing the rescue work, these kids have already been abused. We're going to deal with 20 and 50 years of trauma therapy with these kids after that. And so as I step back and ask myself, what's the real solution? I came to an understanding that it's elevating global consciousness. It's helping men become authentic, becoming men of integrity, women as well, and helping strengthen that nuclear family. Those are really the keys to success here. And why is that? Here's what it is. And I want to delve into this a little bit with your childhood history as well. Statistically, 1 out of every 2 women have been a victim of sexual abuse at some time in their life. And of them, 1 out of every 4, 25% of all women that we know, it was when they were children. With men, it's a little bit less. It's statistically about 1 in 5 at some time in their life. But even with them, 1/4 of them, it was under 10 years old, and it was in their own homes, and or a family member or something like that. And what's happening is unresolved. It becomes generational trauma. So what happens is, and it may not be passed down in the same manner, but we're all dealing with some generational trauma in some way. I look back at my childhood. I wasn't raped as a child, but not once from the time I was born until I was out of the house, not once do I remember my father saying I love you or giving me a hug, not even once. Now you trace that back, and his mother, very similar situations. And I know that back somewhere, whether it was 1 or 2 generations, there was some other types of abuse because it ended up transferring into some of the other family members of some of my cousins, et cetera. And so as I started really looking at this and understanding where the problem originated, every single one of these traffickers and pedophiles that we arrested, the ones that we delved deep into after, we found that every one of them were abused as children themselves. A lot of these, especially the female traffickers, were trafficked as kids themselves. And God bless you. And the majority of men who were, things happen as children, the majority of them become protectors. They grow up and they say, you know what, I will never allow what happened to me to happen to my kids or anyone in my world. And this is so important for me to ensure their safety. But interestingly enough, the ones that fall into that category are ones who have been honest with themselves, have talked about it with their spouses, are not afraid and holding it inside. There's a very damaging cancer, so to speak, that happens emotionally when we bury our wounds. It's like, if I have this massive cut as a kid and then there's a bunch of crap and I'm maybe I get some sewer water in there or whatever else, and if I just cover it up and don't tell mom and dad about it, that's gonna get infected. It's gonna get worse and worse, and you have to open it up, dig out all that infection, clean it, and then heal it properly. And unfortunately, what happens is the average age of a man talking about what happened. In fact, the average age of any person talking about what happened as a child, if they were abused in that way, is 52 years old. That's my age. I've raised my kids. I've got grandkids. I've built my career. And what happens is if we hold that inside, it comes out in anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, anger issues. And for some people, it comes out in trauma transfer, in physical, verbal, or in some cases, the sexual abuse of a child or other people. And so God bless you for being the man that you are as a protector, being one of those, majority that carry through. Have you seen with the men, some that are holding on to that trauma, and what have you seen in terms of methods to release that? Because just by talking about it, just by being willing to talk about it, it takes the chances that people who are abused as children, men, if gone unresolved, 1 in 3 become a contact offender. That's a really scary number, 1 in 3, right? Fortunately, you're one of the 2/3. But the real goal is, how do we take that 1 in 3 and make sure that that trauma is never, ever, ever passed on to a child? And I've seen that the ones who hold it in have a higher chance of passing it on. The ones that are able to just be honest about their feelings, get it out, not hold on to all that negativity, are able to, the chances of them passing it on goes down to almost nil.
Yeah. No, what I've seen, for myself, I did carry it and bury it for a long time, because it was one of those things, but I had acknowledged with myself that it was there, but I had kind of hid it. Like, there was all of this shame. There was all of this guilt. It's interesting that there's like, and I've seen this pattern with other men, is that like, I should have been stronger. I should have been able to do this. I could have prevented this. God forbid I had a physical reaction and enjoyed it. Yeah. And so that can really mess with you, right? But what you're saying is absolutely true in the sense that it seeps out in other ways. Any emotions or fears, doubts, trauma that we carry in our body, the body doesn't forget. And it causes physical and emotional and other actions that we take that are not serving us, right? Especially around the sexual stuff. One of the things I've seen with a lot of men is that it also increases the propensity to objectify women and to prove their masculinity, right? Through other sexual ways and things like that. From a young age, if you're over-sexualized at a very young age in those ways, then it ends up having a negative effect there, which creates a shame cycle and a guilt cycle, and self-worth is really damage there. There's multiple men in the group that have come forward through me sharing my message, them feeling comfortable, hey, I can confide in you, and acknowledging these different things that have taken place. And fortunately, none of them have acted out on those different things, but having a place where you feel safe, you feel seen, you feel that you can confide in someone that you know is not going to take your thing and broadcast it, because there's all of that and the anxiety around it. I think it's been one of the most healing things for people, just acknowledging that it's there. I remember my first plant medicine ceremony where I recognized that it was there. I finally admitted it to myself that it was there. And I saw that like there was this thing that took place, and I had built a fortress around it, and the walls were a mile deep and a mile high, and there was no getting into this thing. I wasn't going to show it. I wasn't going to see it. I wasn't going to look at it. I wasn't going to talk about it. But then I acknowledged that it was there. It was like it was a window or maybe even a door now. And I can see that there's light in there. But like at first, I'm not ready to go in that door. And I don't need to, but I just acknowledge that it's there. And then I brought my wife in, and I bring, a couple other people to like, hey, this is there. And just being patient and loving and gentle with yourself until the time comes that you're like, okay, I'm going to go look at this deeper. I'm going to allow myself to feel what I needed to feel that I never allowed myself to feel, the sadness, the disappointment, the anger, and express all those different parts so that you can move that energy, move that trauma. And then from there, it's this ongoing process of self-love, of recognizing your self-worth. Stop comparing yourself to somebody who didn't have that experience, or somebody who is somewhere where you want to be, or having a different life, and just acknowledge the greatness that you have and where you are, and acknowledge those things with mindfulness and meditation and affirmations and self-love. And building that self-worth has created this, hey, I can talk about it, and it's not a painful thing anymore. It's not a trigger anymore. And I can also lead and shine that light to other people and show hope that like, hey, a number of years ago, I could never have even acknowledged this. And so I think that first step is acknowledging that it's there, and then finding a place where you can share it. I think that's been the most important path there.
I've seen it, the ability to help heal through a lot of that using some of the plant medicine.
Absolutely.
So many examples of beautiful conversations with men and women in that space who, either were holding it all in themselves, or maybe they were trying to go through therapy, and 10 years of therapy wasn't really making a difference.
Yep.
I remember one of our journey experiences, I had a guy there, his name was Jordan. He had a Ferrari and lived this life of, everybody thought, wow, cool life and whatever. And we were laying on the ground, we were looking up because we had some starlight things on the ceiling. Looked pretty dope when you're on medicine, right?
Yeah.
We're laying there just talking. And he said, Paul, do you know that I have not looked in the mirror at myself for 5 years? I said, 5 years? Oh, you were there.
I know.
You were there this one.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot because it was you and me that took him into the mirror together. I said, 5 years. He said, yeah, 5 years. And so we laid there and talked about kind of how he felt about himself and what he thought he would see in the mirror, et cetera. And they'll finally convinced him to get him and go. And he didn't want to look in the mirror himself. And so he needed some support. So me and you went and stood behind him and encouraged him to slowly finally look in the mirror and then say, we said, can you say, I love myself? And he said, no, I can't say that. Can you start by, I like myself, and start there. And then over time, finally saying, I love myself. And then we were able to, you left and you're standing outside, just me and him in the mirror. And then I moved. So it was just him. And the next morning he thanked you and I for helping to introduce him to his new best friend, which was that man in the mirror. And it's so difficult in our conscious life is what I call it, to break through some of those barriers, where we have so many walls that are just built up that it's almost impossible to break through those. And if we come into one of those ceremonies with a clear intention of wanting to be the best version of myself that I can be, and maybe, if you imagine this maze, this start and this finish in our conscious life, we're trying to get down to this finish life of either, self-love or, patience with my kids, or, resolving some of these things I'm holding on to emotionally, whatever they are, we can't get there. And in that space, especially with loving brothers and sisters that are there that can help hold space, then all of a sudden that route to that finish line lights up. And you can see, I know now, I know how to get to that place of self-love. I know how to get to that place of releasing those things that are holding me back, those emotions that are dragging me down all the time, that, inability to look in the mirror or let go of what happened as a child. And it's been beautiful. And I'm more and more on these podcasts, getting more and more vocal about this tool, because, for a while I was like, it's illegal in the US, whatever. But, fortunately, by August of this year, MDMA will be decriminalized nationwide by the FDA, which is so beautiful. And early next year, we should have psilocybin as well. Now, what I worry about that, we talked about this at dinner the other night. What I worry about that is this, those tools, They break down these barriers. Sometimes these barriers are important to prevent evil from coming in and all, right? And people from hurting us, et cetera, right? Those barriers are there for a reason. And it pulls down these barriers and it opens up the spiritual realm. Okay. Now, I believe there's about a third of the intelligences in the universe are non-virtuous. Okay, is what we read in scripture, et cetera. So there's a very high probability, if you're opening up to that spiritual realm, that you can have influences that are not virtuous. And so if people are not setting sacred space, if they are not doing it in an environment with loving, supportive people, if you decide you're going to go do mushrooms at a rave party, and there's sex parties going on and crazy, the negative energy is going to negatively affect you as much as the positivity can happen in one of our guided meditation experiences. And so it's so important, guys, if you're considering using plant medicine as a tool to help open up your connection to your higher self, to make yourself a better person, make sure that you're in an environment with trained facilitators, with people who are loving and supportive of the best version of yourself that you can be, because you're in a malleable position in that space.
Yeah.
So it's important that you align yourself with people who have integrity and want to see the best version of you.
Yeah. It's not something to play around with. It's definitely a spiritual self-healing. Got to go into it with intention, with the right support in the right set and setting. Otherwise it's totally counterintuitive. And that's with everything, right? We can use social media for good or for bad. We can use the internet for good or for bad. There's so many tools that are out there that really can change your life and transform your life in a positive way. And they can also do the opposite.
Yeah.
So I think that, that's important. And hopefully it doesn't get bastardized in a way that isn't seen that way. But we also know that if you go in with the right intention, it can absolutely transform your life. It has for us. And look, it's not easy work either. It's not like you're having fun. A lot of
medicine doesn't just fix everything for you.
No, you got to do the work. But it's a great awareness tool that's been there. And so I'm grateful for it.
It's what I'm spending a lot of our time on, our charity work in the safe houses and stuff, but I'm putting a lot into aligning with different healing retreats and building healing retreats and inviting people to come and participate and be a part of something that's going to truly transform their lives. And so excited about that. So we have 5-6 minutes left,
okay,
maybe 10 minutes left. I want to go down a fun story.
Okay.
So
we got a few of those.
So most of my close friends are really hardworking, and they've created amazing success in their life. And one of your goals on your vision board for a while that probably, I don't know, maybe it wasn't on your vision. Maybe you decide one day you're going to buy it, but you bought a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of Lambo do you have?
It's a Huracan.
So there was a story, was about a year ago?
Oh no, dude, it's been 4 years now.
Was that 4 years ago?
That was 2020, right in the middle of COVID.
Okay. Crazy story about a 5-year-old that got pulled over driving his mama's car on the freeway.
Yes.
And he wanted to go buy a Lamborghini.
Yes.
So tell me the story about that.
Okay. So this is wild.
Awesome.
Yes, the Lambo was on my vision board. It was for a number of years, and I said I was going to do it, and I kept putting it off the goal. Like, I'm not worthy of it yet, or I'm not. That's a whole different story. But to answer your question, yes, it was on there. Finally pulled the trigger, and it's become a really cool tool and created some really fun experiences like this one. So this 5-year-old boy wanted a Lamborghini. He told his parents he wanted a Lamborghini. He watched Lamborghini videos. He knew that they had them in California. His mom's like, no, you can't have a Lamborghini. 5 years old. Okay.
5.
Now, granted, this kid he was the size of me when I was 12. So he was a bigger 5-year-old. Anyway, his parents are gone. His sister's babysitting. She's asleep. He gets a stool, gets up on the counter, gets the keys to the car. It's like a Honda Pilot, one of those like SUVs. He moves the seat all the way up, all the way forward. He goes and finds money in the house. I think he found $3 and he set out on the mission of a lifetime to go buy a Lamborghini. And he lives in Ogden, Utah, up north. And he knew how to go from his house to I-15 to the freeway. He gets on the freeway and is going 35 miles an hour. Now that's as far as his foot would reach the pedal. And, 65 mile an hour speed limit, he's going 35, and highway patrol found him. 5 years old, cruising on the freeway to go buy a Lambo. And he takes off, and the cops pull up, they turn the siren on, lights on. And after a little while, he pulled over, and genius that he was able to do that as well. It's like all these things are miraculous. The police officer gets up there and is like, holy smokes, what's going on? The kid's like, oh, I'm going to buy a Lamborghini in California. And he was actually heading in the right direction, 10 hours away, but yeah. And they take him back home. And then the news comes out, and there's an article talking about this kid that took the car, and luckily nobody was hurt. It could have been serious damage, all these things. And somebody sent me the article and was just like, I could see you doing this as a kid. And I was like, well, I was 12 when I took my parents' car for the first time. So this kid's got me by a few years. But I thought I was really inspired. I was like, this is amazing. Like, there was a lot of negative publicity about reckless parents. Someone should call DCFS. This kid could have killed somebody. All this negativity, right? And I was like, I'm inspired by this kid. So I sent a message to the editor and said, hey, can you put me in touch with the family? And I've got a Lamborghini, and I'd love to make this kid's dream come true. And the next day I get a call from the newspaper, and they said, hey, we got a hold of the parents. They are willing to do it. they asked when you could. And I said, well, I live about an hour and a half away. I could be there in an hour and a half. They're like, okay. And they said, come. So I showed up. I was expecting the family to be there, but when I pulled onto this street, there was probably 40 people there. His aunts, his uncles, his cousins, his family, and every news station was there. And I pulled up and gave this little kid a hug, told him I was glad he was okay, and I took him for a ride in the Lambo. And they kind of interviewed me like, why did you do this? And I said, well, this kid exemplified everything that an entrepreneur, and you and I had talked about it, and you had mentioned some of these things too. Is like he knew what he wanted. He had a clear vision of what he wanted, and maybe he was a little out of line. I'm not suggesting kids don't listen to their parents, but like he didn't take no for an answer, and that's also a very important quality if you're going to have success in life, right? And then he overcame objections. He found a way. He lifted the seat. He did what he could. He found what he could as far as the money, right? And then he took off, and he took immediate massive action, imperfect, and maybe misdirected, but at the end of the day, he went after it, and that was inspiring to me. And so I wanted to bring that closer. And man, that article went bonkers. People were like, you are encouraging bad behavior. Like I was villainized, and it came out in, I think I got that sent to me in like 6 different languages. Every news called me, every news station, the Wall Street Journal, they all called and interviewed me. It was in the middle of COVID, and it was all negative stories. And this was like a positive story, controversial, but positive. And that kid got a movie deal offer. So I ended up my attorneys ended up reviewing these things and kind of trying to help them out to make decisions on what they were doing. DCFS got called. So then they called us concerned about that. And I became a good friend of the family. And his sister, who was mortified and felt like she had put everything at risk, reached out to me a few times and kind of built a friendship. So I still follow her on Instagram. She follows me. We talk, check in on Adrian every once in a while. I got to go do a round 2 with him. He's got to be close to 10 now. But it was a really cool experience. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
Do you know I've never rented your Lambo?
Really? I've had it for 5 years, 4 years.
What the crap of a friend are you?
It's outside, so you got time? Let's go.
Yeah. I love and respect you.
Thank you, brother.
Jeremy.
Likewise.
Like to the core, everything about who you are, who you've become, the heart that you have, the family that you've created, the obstacles that you've overcome personally, and the charity work that you have done to make a positive impact in the lives of others. I'm honored to call you my friend. And then I'm grateful that you came and spent some time with my audience today. Super, super grateful for you.
It was an honor to be here. Thank you, Paul.
You're a good man.
Love you, bro.
Thank you for joining us on the Liberating Humanity podcast. This was a beautiful, beautiful interview with one of my best friends on the planet. If you like this, please hit the like button, subscribe, send this to other people. Let's get this positive message of making a difference in the world around you, of achieving your dreams, of fixing your own challenges of your life. Let's get that out there. Thank you for joining us today.